become the sovereign, and they are to never forget it. The part about being the sovereign. If we're going to change this country, we're going to have to stand up. And we're going to have to be sovereigns. And we can be. It's a lot easier than you think. We've been programmed to react and respond to authority without question. In this country, it's a free country, and it's built on the ability of the people to vote. So why is it that only 8 to 11% of the people show up to vote? What is the problem? I think I know what the problem is. And often the problem's not where you find the problem somewhere other than where you would expect. Most all of us went to public schools. Some of us went to private schools, but whichever one you went to, throughout the most formative years of your life, you were indoctrinated into the American way of life. You were told about all these great and wonderful rights that we have. In Texas, we have Ross Perot pushed through the education reform bill that was touted primarily to stop social promotion. It said, there shall be no social promotions. The grade shall reflect demonstrated mastery of subject matter. But that was a second provision. The first provision of the education reform bill said, the schools shall instill in the child a deep and abiding faith in and respect for the American form of government, and they did that through constant indoctrination. However, while they told us about all these great and wonderful rights that we had, they very clearly demonstrated, while you're in this school, don't even think about trying to express one of those rights, or the whole weight of the system will land right squarely on your head. Well, what do we expect? We put our children through 12 years of this hypocrisy, and all of a sudden they get out of school and we expect them to just magically become empowered citizens. I go to court, traffic court. I mean, big deal. You're going to lose a few bucks. I mean, it's not like they're going to hang you up by your heels. And people walk into the court and they are visibly shaking. They remind me of the third grader being called up before the principal and read the riot act. And they act just like those third graders. I'm going to suggest we stop acting like the third graders and start acting like the parents and take this country back. And when we come back on the other side, I'll talk about just exactly how to do that. Okay, this is Brandon Kelton, Deborah Stevens, Eddie Craig, Rural Law Radio. Now we're going to talk about how to take the country back, how to be the sovereign. And frankly, not only is it easier than you would think, it's more rewarding than you would imagine. I have spent the better part of my adult life struggling with this particular problem and studying law and trying to figure out how to fix it. It has cost me a lot, but the value I have received from it is far beyond anything that it cost me. Because whatever else I may be, in this country, I am a free man. Now, we may be in a police state, and we may have police and courts that absolutely ignore law and do whatever they want to. But when it comes to me, if they start in on me, they're going to get a fight they're not going to believe. Win, lose, or draw, when I get done, they're not ever going to want to do that again. That's the best I can do. I don't feel intimidated by my public officials. And it's not hard to get to that position. Now, Chris is screening calls right now. He's done the same thing. He actually stood up to them, used their law against them, and found out that it was a hoot. That most of what you fear from them is false fear. When you take their law and take it back to them, it is extremely powerful. And the most powerful tool we have out there is the grand jury. Grand juries were put in place specifically to protect the public from the governmental instruments they put in place. The grand jury is there to protect you and I from our public officials. Yes, they're the ones that find indictment. And that's because we don't trust our public officials to do that. We insisted that a grand jury of our peers are the ones that decide whether or not someone's prosecuted. Now, I know people will say that the grand jury's been corrupted, that the prosecuting attorney controls the grand jury. Well, I can tell you from experience, while the prosecutor may hold a certain amount of sway with the grand jury, I have yet to meet a single prosecutor who thought he controlled the grand jury. My prosecutor in Wise County told me once, those darn grand jurors, you never know what they're going to do. And that's true, you don't. There is a Supreme Court judge, I don't remember his name off the hand at the moment, but he said any prosecutor worth his salt could get a ham sandwich indicted. And that's true, they can. However, the problem the prosecutors have is keeping the ham sandwich from getting indicted. And that's where you and I come in. When I walk into a courthouse, I come in with two hats. I walk in with my litigant's hat on, and I litigate whatever issue I have before the courts. Unless or until one of my public officials crosses one of my legal lines. Then I take off my litigant's hat and I put on my sovereign's hat. Because in the end, this is not a democracy that we live in. It's a republic. It's a democratic republic, but it's still a republic. In a democracy, if the people want your property, they can take your property. If they want your life, they can take your life. But in a republic, all power flows not from the people, but from the individual. All rights are bestowed not on the people, but on the individual. We each have our sovereign rights and our sovereign duties. When I come before the court, I am the sovereign, but not from the perspective of my rights and privileges, but from the perspective of my duty. It is my duty to preserve this system for my children and my grandchildren. It's my duty and it's your duty to give them a system better than the one we got. And we can do that. It's not as hard as you think. I went through due process and I told you about all the criminal complaints, the crimes these public officials were committing. So what's the remedy? Well, if you have knowledge that a crime's been committed and you don't report that crime, you can be prosecuted for that. In the federal code, it's 18 U.S. Code 4. Now, it's not 18 U.S. Code 3592 or something way down there in the back. It is right up in the front. They didn't want you to miss it. It's called misprision of felony. If you have knowledge that a felony's been committed and you don't report that crime, you can be prosecuted for misprision of felony. So, if you have knowledge that a crime's been committed by a public official, you have a duty to report that crime. And I go in and they say, well, if you don't like what we're doing, just vote us out. I say, well, I'm not going to fall into the fallacy of the ballot box. I have a better idea. I'd rather get you indicted. I bushwhacked the highest criminal district judge in Travis County, Bob Perkins, in his courtroom, and dropped criminal complaints on him against all of the highest judges against the district attorney. And the complaint is that the district attorney secreted criminal complaints from all the highest judges in Texas from the grand jury. And he told me, well, Mr. Kelton, district judges in Travis County don't take criminal complaints. So that's okay, Your Honor. I'm not here to invoke your duty as a district judge. I'm here to invoke your duty as a magistrate, and that's a duty from which you may not shield yourself. And he wound up giving me about 30 minutes of legal advice, and when he told me I should file a complaint with the sheriff's department, told him I did that, and they threw it in the trash. He said, well, you should petition a district court for writ of mandamus, or appeal to the district court for a writ of mandamus. Oh, Judge, don't ask me to appeal. You go before a corrupt judge and he renders a bogus decision, and they say, oh, that's okay. You can go before a whole panel of corrupt judges, and they'll really screw you royal. And he said, well, Mr. Kelton, I don't think it's quite that bad. I said, that's because you're not pro se. I got a better idea. I'll appeal to the grand jury. Well, Mr. Kelton, you can't appeal to the grand jury. Sure I can. I can appeal to the grand jury to indict the sheriff for shielding from prosecution in violation of 3805 Penal Code. And he sat back in the seat and just kind of stared at me for a minute like he didn't believe what I just said. But yes, as a matter of fact, I can appeal to the grand jury to indict the sheriff, to indict the judge, to indict the prosecutor, to indict anyone that violates a criminal law. Now, if you try to go to the grand jury with a criminal complaint, everyone in the system is going to do everything they can to stop you. And that's okay. Because for the most part, we're trying to fix the system. If you're going down to the court to exact retribution, you're wasting your time. And you're wasting your energy. It is important that we very clearly define our outcomes. Not your personal, petty, private motives. But in the end, at the end of the day, what do you want? If you don't know where you're going, I can assure you, you will wind up somewhere else. So before you do anything, you need to decide, what outcome are you trying to achieve? Keep in mind, these public officials, especially in the criminal arena, are very good at confrontation. It's what they do all day, every day. Don't think you can go down there confrontational and out-confront them. This is their specialty. The way to beat them, the way to stay ahead of them, is to very clearly define in your mind, what is my intended ultimate outcome? I have an ultimate outcome defined that I hold always in front of me. In everything I do, I am trying to reach a position such that every judge in the country, when he steps up behind the bench and looks out across the bar at the gallery, I want him wondering, which one? Which one of those rotten scoundrels out there are waiting for me to render a ruling that he doesn't like, so he can run down to a grand jury and try to get me indicted? Thomas Jefferson said, when the people fear the government, there is tyranny. When the government fears the people, there is liberty. Thomas Jefferson and his contemporaries gave us the tool we need to give the government reason to fear the people. And in the next segment, I will go through precisely how to work it.